The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Well, the Super Bowl is over, and I can safely say it will not be missed. That was terrible. And nobody cares what I think about the Super Bowl because I do a fantasy NBA podcast and everything I talk about is basketball, and I worked in baseball for 10 years, and literally nothing I've done in my life has revolved around football aside from going to a few games my freshman year of college for a Cal team that went 1-10, with the only win coming on the 9/11 makeup game over winter break. So there were like 85 people in the crowd, not me. Then Cal hired Jeff Tedford the following season. They got good, but I had already lost interest. So I literally have nothing to do with football in any way, shape, or form. I grew up in Los Angeles, basically without a team. And the current team, and I know there's two, they both went to the playoffs, and one of them went to the Super Bowl. And so I tried my best to care, and I just, it's bad luck to some degree that a sport has an opportunity to put its best show on for a lot of people that don't pay attention all season long, and then they dropped that fecal bag upon us. But that's what we got. And the whole time I'm watching it, thinking, 0-0, 3-0, 3-3. I kept thinking, man, baseball takes a lot of flack for garbage just like this. So stop it. NBA's the best. It's so glad to be talking basketball again today. I'm so sick of my Twitter timeline having anything to do with football, and now we can get away from that for a little bit until the NFL draft stuff starts to creep back into the mix. What did you guys think of the commercials? That's what we all say, right? That's what those of us who don't care about football say at the end of the Super Bowl. What did you think about the commercials? Well, I found them to be sort of robot-heavy. Anyway, this is Fantasy NBA Today. It's a Hoop Ball presentation brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. HawaiianIsles.com is the website. You can find them on Amazon by searching for Hawaiian Isles Coffee or just Hawaiian Isles. And you can follow them on Twitter at HI Kona Coffee. They are our partners in crime over here at Hoop Ball, fantasy NBA enthusiasts. Partners as well on our weekly DFS contests on Wednesdays, shooting out coffee goodie bags to second-place winners across the fantasy globe. Seriously, they're shipping stuff all over the place. Although, really, if we're going to send something to Australia, which we did, I guess Hawaii's not the worst place for us to ship it from. HawaiianIsles.com once more. You'll be hearing about it again on other podcasts here at Hoop Ball, for they are our presenting sponsor. It's Monday, which means we got a reverse chronological lightning round coming up. I want to talk a bit about our trade deadline live coverage coming up on Thursday. I'd also like to make mention on today's show of the insanely low price of our Hoop Ball premium membership. And you guys might remember that I pushed that down your throats a little bit at the beginning of January. Well, it's now the beginning of February, so it's time for me to push it down your throat again. So do what that guy did on the world's most amazing whatever show that aired right after the Super Bowl. And Super Bowl? Did I just say that? Super Bowl. And remove your gag reflex because the premium membership is going straight down your gullet. And I'll tell you about that in the middle of the program. We also want to break down some of what we're learning from our revenge and other gambling tracking systems to this point. Again, not recommending any flat wagers on all this stuff. We're learning as we go. Some good, some bad to this point, which is actually kind of a good thing, because if everything was coming out sunshine and roses, I don't think that it would be reasonable. I think the more everything looks good, the more you think you need more of a sample size. If you're getting some stuff that's coming up good and some stuff coming up bad, you start to think, well, maybe you've got something on one side, or maybe you've got something on both, because evidence of any kind is useful. So we'll prep that a little bit for you. Short Monday card to get ready for this evening. Couple of things on the docket, starting to think about deadline stashes, starting to get a little bit healthier. We saw the new Knicks play. We haven't seen the new Mavericks yet, and that'll be coming up here shortly. They got a ball game tonight. Don't they? I thought they did. No, they got one tomorrow. when I was doing the gambling prep, I could have sworn I looked up Mavericks, but I most definitely did not, and this is why I need to get more sleep. Kiddo's been sick. That usually contributes to it. So let's just jump right in. We'll tackle the reverse chronological lightning round. You know how this goes. We talk about the games on Sunday and then Saturday, and then if anything is left over, we'll break it down from Friday's card, but it's all 30 teams' most recent basketball game, and any thoughts that you can sort of pull away from not only that game, but also what's to expect from that team moving forward. Without further ado, Memphis, New York Grizzlies, believe it or not, on a revenge game here. They lost to the Knicks in Los Angeles a few weeks back, and they were the one. All three of the games, by the way, on Sunday were revenge games, and Memphis was the only team that covered. The other ones both ended up getting swept in their season series and ATS. Memphis 96, New York 84. On the Memphis side, it was good to see Conley and Gasol each play over 30 minutes apiece. Justin Holiday logged 37 minutes in this basketball game. Yes, you heard that correctly. And so you kind of understand why I've been pushing this pro-Holiday agenda. And a lot of it's just because of opportunity. Sounds like Slow-Mo's shoulder injury might actually keep him out for more than a couple of games. It sounded initially like it might be just a brief respite, but I guess he was getting additional tests on that thing. And so for Holiday here, with, again, Conley on the block, Gasol on the block, and their minutes being forced downward, basically to try to keep these guys healthy in the event somebody's going to take them off of Memphis's hands, provided they don't get someone that's exclusively, an above-average shooting guard, Holiday might log the most minutes on the team the rest of the way. And every time you bump him up a rung in the scoring ladder, his value moves up exponentially. He's one of those intensely low-usage guys who has to get over a certain hump, and it's not a minutes hump. So I think sometimes when I talk about Holiday, I refer to him a little bit in that Thad Marvin line, where he needs 30 minutes and he'll be effective over that. It's not really the case with Holiday, because when he's the fourth or fifth option on the floor, he can be out there for 40 minutes and he can give you the Shane Battier, 9 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. And you're like, well, I feel like he played okay in this game, but he just didn't do anything on the floor. He needs to feel confident enough to take shots. And for some guys in the NBA, and Holiday appears to be one of them, part of that is basically just convincing himself mentally that him taking the shot is one of the better options for the team on offense. I can understand it. Basketball is a confidence game when it comes right down to it. And obviously for a guy like Holiday who's been shooting very poorly, basically for his career, he's not a great shooter, and a lot of his shots come from three-point land, so that's going to drive his number down. He took 10.4 shots per game in Chicago this year, and 7 of them were from three-point line. So there was sort of no way that he was going to have a good shooting percentage. But he started the year in that 41, 42 range, and then it's just been trending down, and he's around 38 with Chicago, and he's at 31 with Memphis. And so if you're an emotional human being, which almost everybody in the NBA is, because there's so much up and down that goes in a season, and you're just bricking everything, and you're on a team with Mike Conley and Marc Gasol and Jaren Jackson Jr., and, I'm not going to throw Slow-Mo necessarily into the mix on the offensive end, but if you're Justin Holiday and you're not making anything, you start to think, well, I'd rather just not even take this shot. I'm just going to not do it. So he could play 40 minutes and take 8 shots. That's not much. A shot every 5 minutes out there, that should be a lot of possessions. He should be getting more opportunities than that. If you're on the floor for 40 minutes, you should get, I would think, at least 10 to 12 shots a game. And that was sort of what was going on in Chicago this year, where he was out there for 35, 36 minutes, and he was taking 11 shots, basically. And then guys started coming back, and his shots declined precipitously. Look at the game log for Justin Holiday this year. Early in the season, when Chicago was generally healthy, he was taking in that 10 to 12 range. And then there was a stretch where everybody was hurt, and he was taking more like 14 shots. And then in December, when everybody started coming back, it went from 14 shots a game to 12 to 10. And then over the last, 2 or 3 weeks with Chicago, it was like 9. And in Memphis, where, in Chicago at least, you're like, okay, well, I am actually a better offensive player than basically everybody on this team besides Zach LaVine, maybe. I mean, LaVine a better off. I think we can all agree he's a better offensive player. He doesn't play any defense, but he's better offensively than Justin Holiday. He goes to Memphis. He is at best the third option on offense, and most days he's more like fourth or fifth on that team. And so it's a tough sell to be out there for 40 minutes and to take 6-7 shots. But every time you remove one of those guys in front of him in the pecking order, a guy like Justin Holiday says, you know what? Okay, if I take this shot right now, this is one of the better opportunities we're going to have on this team. And you're starting to see a little bit of that. He took 13 shots in Charlotte. He took 16 against New York. And, Conley missed that Charlotte game, so I would have drawn a 1-to-1 conclusion there. But Conley played in this one. Garrett Temple's out. Again, Slow-Mo's out. Jaren Jackson was back for this ball game. Played 25 minutes. He got his 11 shots. He took the third most shots on the team. That's a really good sign. So I still believe that Justin Holiday is a guy that should be owned. His 0 for 10 game probably got him dropped in a number of spots. And, by the way, the steals are going to level off. He's not doing it defensively in Memphis, but he will. Especially if they trade anybody and they start to play kind of ugly basketball. I'm going to talk about guys that I'm looking at the trade deadline. One of them is just sort of already there. What about if these guys get traded? Well, Shelvin Mack was already playing 25 minutes. He's not a great fantasy asset, but if he bumps into Mike Conley's 35 minutes a game, he's a guy you should own. I'm not going to pick him up in advance of the deadline, though. And I would guess that if Conley gets traded, they're probably going to try to bring back a young point guard prospect of some kind. So give Shelvin Mack like a 10% chance of being relevant the rest of the way. Holiday's the easy one. Caspi's out forever. Slow-Mo, who knows? Garrett Temple, who knows? They're trying to move these veterans, and Holiday, he's on the block too, by the way, so this could all blow up in our face. But in terms of guys that could get sort of left behind, he's a guy that could churn something out. On the New York side, DeAndre Jordan got the start. He played almost 30 minutes in his Knicks debut. Luke Cornett came off the bench and played 20 minutes. He had a solid ball game, Cornett, 11 points, 4 boards, 3 threes, 3 blocks. But this was with Mitchell Robinson out, and I'm inclined to believe that Robinson moves in front of Cornett as the backup center because he's kind of the future of what they want to do there. Do we know if DeAndre Jordan's going to be with the Knicks past the deadline? All reasonable humans would think he won't be, but this is also the Knicks, and anything stupid could happen, and he could end up there. So you have to sort of hedge your bets a little bit. And I tweeted, there's a very real possibility that after the trade deadline, New York might have none or one 9-category relevant guy. My money's on Mitchell Robinson. Because I think Dennis Smith Jr. is going to end up doing more, but he also does so many things that hurt you. Free throws, turnovers, especially because now we're going to run the offense. His inefficiency numbers could be crushing. Until Mitchell Robinson comes back, he's out with an injury, so I don't expect it to be too long. Cornett as the backup here is not that thrilling, and you guys could probably hear me talk about it on a podcast where I like him, but I'm not completely sold on it. If DeAndre Jordan does get moved, and the Knicks then split the center minutes, we've seen that Mitchell Robinson basically can't handle more than about 20 to 22, so that puts Cornett in that 26 to 28 range, and I once referred to it as a tandem bicycle situation where you could end up with both centers with fantasy value, but we got to get rid of DeAndre Jordan. And we also have to assume David Fizdale doesn't decide he wants to go Noah Vonleh for 15 minutes at the center position and further cut into the younger guys, which they did last week. Ugh, what a mess. Oklahoma City and Boston, this is a pretty easy situation to decipher. The general same old guys kind of thing shaking out. Marcus Smart had one of his better games. Kyrie's playing well again. Al Horford's looked really good lately in a weird point guardian number for him. Marcus Morris is warming back up, although some of his fantasy stuff is a little bit deficient. You know, the defensive stats are not always there, but he's been okay again. And then, you saw Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, and Terry Rozier kind of take a step back in this ball game. Such is the thing for the Boston Celtics. But, of course, they put up a $134. You're going to see some pretty good fantasy lines. Clippers got blown out in Toronto despite a nice game from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's been playing relatively well over the last week. We need to find out what's going to happen with this team when Gallo comes back. I've been enamored with Patrick Beverley because generally he's been rebounding and assisting, hitting threes, and getting steals and blocks, and you guys know how much I love all that good stuff. He didn't do much in this ballgame. Clippers got waxed pretty much start to finish. Tobias Harris dealing with a shoulder thing, did not look fully healthy. Who knows when Gallo's going to be back? Could be one more game, could be a half dozen. Everything with him takes longer. We've been down this road before. So, I don't know that I'm racing out to pick up Gilgeous-Alexander despite a good week. If you want to, if you have a spot to use, go for it. I feel like there's all these guys floating around out there that have a higher ceiling and a better path. And for me, even on the Clippers, I felt like that was Beverley. He's been in front of Gilgeous-Alexander for the better part of a month and a half now. And he gets my vote between those two guys, although, in this particular game, SGA had the better one. For Toronto, no Kyle Lowry. So Freddie VanVleet stepped up with 9, 5, and 7. He's the obvious streamer in situations like that. Jonas Valanciunas could come back this week. That would be pretty sweet. We've been waiting a very long time for a top 90 guy. A bit of a punch to the gut. Hope, I think, for a lot of us was that he'd be back by now, maybe even a week ago. He hasn't been. I don't feel bad about holding him all this time. But now that we're this far, you sort of have no choice but to finish that sucker off. Turn the clock back to Saturday. Only 3 games on Sunday, so we obviously knew we'd have to knock out a few from the previous day. We already talked Clippers. We'll talk about the Pistons. Reggie Jackson, Reggie Bullock both had nice ball games in a losing effort, and they've each actually had a couple good ones in a row, but it's a sell high. Beyond nothing more, nothing less. We know how things go for these two Reggies. You know exactly what you're getting over the course of the year, and everybody, even the bad ones, have a couple of warm days. So act accordingly. Milwaukee blew out Washington. That was one of the revenge games from Saturday, by the way. Clippers was another one from Saturday that went well. Eric Bledsoe sat this one out with Achilles soreness, although he is probable for Milwaukee's next ball game tonight, so that's good news. And George Hill goes back to being a pumpkin. That's a pumpkin. On the Washington side, Satoransky played 24 minutes. We got some questions on him. He picked up 3 fouls in 12 first-half minutes, and he played 12 second-half minutes, but they were getting blown out of the water, so he just never got back into the game. It is not entirely clear what they did in his stead, and it's weird because he was actually playing well, by all accounts, better than, Jeff Green. But old Scotty Brooks having a little fun with it. Chase and Randall played 14 minutes. They went down to presumably a Beal point guard lineup for a little bit, and that's kind of dumb. But I'm not bailing out on Sato. His lines have been outstanding since John Wall went down, and I see no reason to make any moves on that front. They just went kind of big in this game. I think what you may have seen was not much of the point guard situation happening on the Milwaukee side, point Giannis, and so you maybe didn't need Sato, but from looking at the way the rest of these guys played, I don't fully understand it. Also, Thomas Bryant, only 18 minutes in this game. I had a feeling that you'd see more Jeff Green's center where the situation warranted it, and chasing Brook Lopez out to the three-point line, that's one of those spots. You also had no Jan Mahimi in this game, so you can't pin it on necessarily a backup center. No one else on the roster that played is even listed as center. And with Bryant trending down like this, I'm inclined to consider moving on. I know we were really high on him for a while, and the situation looked good, but we always sort of knew that with Scotty Brooks, things could get weird. And now Markieff Morris is hoping to get back after the All-Star break, and that's still a couple weeks away. But Thomas Bryant may have had his sort of time in the sun. I would keep a real close watch on him, though. I think you're going to see him popping up on waiver wires after low minute totals for a few games here, and the hope is that maybe he can get this thing turned around. Chicago-Charlotte, Bobby Portis went Chuck crazy. And it worked in this ball game. He had 33 points on 23 shots, 9 rebounds, 2 steals, 4 3-pointers. This is as good as it gets for old Bobbert. Nice to see him getting more minutes than Robin Lopez. Who knows what's going to happen with Chicago after the deadline. He should be getting out there and getting 12 to 15 shots up. This team. Chicago made all 25 of their free throws in this ball game. Interesting little footnote, and still lost by 7 because they're terrible. Kemba Walker had 37 and 10. I think Walker owners were pleased by this one because he'd been in a little bit of a mini funk. Not a whole lot else to note on this team. We've been getting some Jeremy Lamb questions. He's been in kind of a shooting slump for about a month and a half now. That's been quietly driving his value down, but he's still hanging in the top 80 range for the year despite all of that. So not a situation I'm panicking on. Plus, when you get these Malik Monk warm runs where he heats up from downtown for a couple of ball games, that can negatively impact Lamb's minutes. I just love that Marvin Williams is playing the second most minutes on the team. He's cruising. I don't know why you guys are out there. If you tweet at me that Marvin Williams is a free agent in your 9-category league and ask if you should pick him up, I'm just going to reach through the computer and slap you across the face. 13-4, 2 threes, 2 steals, a block, 2 assists, 5 out of 9 shooting, no turnovers. This is classic Marv, man. It's now that he's settled in, he's number 63 over the last month, basically just the numbers he's going to have all year. 2 and change 3-pointers, 43% shooting, 5 to 7 rebounds, a steal, half a block, no turnovers, basically. This is Marv, man. He's a top 70 guy. There's no reason he should be on a waiver wire other than people don't care about the turnover category. If you're punting turnovers, fine. Don't pick him up. Any other instance, stop asking. You're killing me with this stuff. Brooklyn, beat up by Orlando. I mean, Jonathan Isaac, man, this is going to be the one that chews at me forever. Not that I dropped him and then he immediately got good, but there was one league where I had him for the first 2 months, dropped him. Someone else picked him up for a month. They dropped him. I picked him up for a week, then dropped him again, and then he got good like a week after that. The timing doesn't fully add up the way that I said it. So some of those, if I had him for like a month and a half instead of 2 months, just take my word for it. I had him twice, and the second time I dropped him, he got hot like a week after that. I was really close. But injuries, man, this is what killed me. I had so many guys out that I just couldn't afford to sit on a guy like Isaac when he wasn't doing anything, when there were guys out there that were. So I'm going to be kicking myself, but I also have to realize that what I did for a reason. But if you ended up with him, look at that. Oh, my God. 10 and 12, 3 steals and 3 blocks. I miss you already, Jonathan. I miss you already. Indiana beat Miami on Saturday. I'm going to spend a minute on the Miami side here. Indiana was pretty straightforward. Miles Turner is going to log the bulk of the center minutes. We've seen Domantas Sabonis fall off a cliff a little bit lately. And I thought something like this might happen. I didn't think it was going to be this precipitous, though. So I can't really pat myself on the back on that one. But I did warn you guys that nobody really shoots 70% for a year. Remember when he was going at that insane clip? He's been wildly ineffective over the last week. So that's also more of a bottoming out point for him. But you sort of have to, I think you have to just assume that it's the rigors of a long season. And for a guy who doesn't do much on the defensive side, if he goes through a little bit of a skid, it gets ugly quick. Problem is, I don't think you could buy low on Sabonis. I think whoever has him still values him the way he was going for the first 2.5 months of the year when he was a top 60 guy and not the last month where he's been a top 110 guy, and certainly not the last week where he's been number 300, right? Anybody that had him this long knows that this is a short slump, right? I assume they do, but you could try to go get him. I don't know what it would take at this point. Someone in that top 80, top 90 range. I do think Sabonis bounces back. I don't know when or how hard, but I think he'll be okay. He'll be better than he has been the last little bit. Taron Collison, he looks ready to roll the rest of the way. Thad Young going through a little bit of a shooting skid right now, but he's getting his rebounds and steals, and so everything is fairly straightforward, except for Tyreek Evans, who I continue to think is going to have to be the guy to help this team get things squared away. They won this game with defense, shooting 42.5% offensively, missing a bunch of free throws, and only hitting 7 3-pointers. It's not usually a recipe for winning a ball game, but they did it because they forced Miami into 23 turnovers and also held them to 42.5% shooting. So an unusual game. Indiana's had a really good defense all season long. That will take a hit with Oladipo out, unquestionably. There's going to be a lot more pick and roll, so a slower offense. But they're going to need Tyreke Evans to be the guy to get him a few easy looks. Part of that second unit, if that's where they decide to use him. He played only 16 minutes in this game, where Corey Joseph got 31. And he wasn't very good in them, but he was better than Evans. And I still think he's going to end up having to do something. I don't know what or when, as I've said before, but keep a close watch on Tyreke. First sign of life from him, I think you pick him up and you rocket him right into the lineup. The Heat side. Well, they only played 9 guys. That's the positive, I guess. Wayne Ellington got the DNP. Goran Dragic and Derek Jones are both out. And so with the rotation cut down to 9, at least that does simplify things a little bit. Josh Richardson continues to be worth starting, despite the fact that he wasn't very good in this ballgame. Dwayne Wade in points formats continues to be relevant. He's having his farewell tour, so he's doing enough to sort of pop off in leagues where percentages don't kill you. And then Hassan Whiteside, I've been sort of arguing all year that he's worth starting because the stats that you expect him to be good in, he's continued to be good in those. He's averaging 12.5 points and 12.5 rebounds this year and 2.2 blocked shots, which is still up among the league leaders. And his rebounds are actually up from last year. His scoring is down. His shots per game are down. But, this one we had to get to. The free throws are up from last year. He's back to 4 per game, and he is making 41.6%. And I have officially hit the point where I don't think you can start him. He's single-handedly losing you a category in head-to-head every week because it's not that low a volume. You pray that it'll be low volume. That's all you hope for on a night-to-night basis, is that he's not going to get to the free throw line that often. He played 15 minutes in the game against Chicago and somehow managed to go 2 for 4. He played 20 minutes in that game against Oklahoma City and somehow managed to go 0 for 3 at the free throw line with 5 turnovers. He has been secretly unusable. For the season, he's number 114. That doesn't sound that terrible, right? 114, you could find a way to slot that into a lineup. Last month, 172. Last week, 223. I'll give the dude credit. He's shooting 62% from the field over the last month or so that number's actually been on the rise. But you almost have to just abandon ship. I mean, look at where you are in your standings and then make the adjustment accordingly. You could probably figure out, I mean, you can do it. It wouldn't take all that long, actually. We're not going to do the exercise here on the podcast, but there's a way to look and see what all of your guys have done for the entire season. It would probably take you about 4 minutes to punch it all into your calculator and just try to figure out whatever your season totals may be. Whatever they are, season totals, and you probably can't find out the exact number of free throws your team has taken for the entire year. You can try. I don't know if Yahoo provides that data, like actual number of free throws out of number of attempts, but you can get pretty close, I think, to knowing it. Like, I think if you go to the league, if you're in a roto league, you can go to standings, you can go to team view, and then you can look at the guys that you've dropped and see how they've impacted your roster as well. But if you're like me, you've made a ton of moves, and so that's going to be really hard to compute. However, what you can do is you can ballpark it. And for a guy like Hassan Whiteside, you can go and you can look up exactly how many free throws he's made and how many he's missed. and just estimate. Simply estimate how many free throws you think your team has taken. What would moving Hassan Whiteside off of your team actually do to your free throw percent? Would it bump it 10 points? More? Less? How many free throws has your team taken? I mean, we're talking about a guy in Whiteside right now that is shooting, as I just mentioned, 41.5% for the year. He's 74 for 178. Pull out 74 makes, pull out 104 misses, whatever it takes with your team right now, and try to figure out what that would mean. I don't know precisely how many free throws teams have taken at this point in the year. You know what you could do to probably figure it out is find out sort of the average number of free throws attempted per player in the NBA, and then just multiply that by how many games played you're at. And then you can do the math that way. But I would be willing to guess that on the low end, he's probably cost you 10 percentage points in free throws. What would that actually mean for your fantasy team right now? That 1 point in free throws? 2 points? It's probably more than that, come to think of it. 74 out of 178. Has he cost you 20 points? My team's at 77.9% free throw shooting. Without Hassan Whiteside, is my team an 80% foul shooting club? That's 3 points for me in that department. Likewise, what about on the flip side? How many blocks has he gained me? A number, not nothing. You can't just pull out the free throws and not remove the fact that he's blocked 101 shots this year. That'd be a big difference. 101 shots would, I think, drop me into dead last in blocks in that league. But you're also not, whoever you put in for Whiteside would presumably be getting something in that department. Let's say you flipped him out for, I don't know, who's a center that's available in almost every league. How about Nerlens Noel? What if you put him in there, a guy who also blocks shots? He's at 1.4 blocks per game, and he's played about the same number of games. So he's at 68 blocks instead of 101. So take 33 blocks out of your mix and bump your free throw up by 15 to 20%. 1.5 to 2% for the year. What would that do to your team? How far down in the mix would 30 blocks drop you? 1 point, 2 points? Probably 2 would be my guess. So I think we're looking at a situation right now where Whiteside, at least for my team, costing me more than he's helping. You should also think about that if you have him on your ball club. We got a long sidebar there on Hassan Whiteside. I just think that sometimes we get caught up in what a guy has done and what we expect him to do in the future. And sometimes, I say I don't like to get cute, but he's crushing my team. Literally crushing my team on a daily basis. And his blocks have gone down precipitously after that strong start. Anyway, let's move along. Dallas at Cleveland. Oh, man, I've got thoughts on this game, too. Maxi Kleber played 27 minutes in the starting role. He had 10 and 9 with a steal, 2 blocks, and a couple of three-pointers. I don't actually see anybody taking his minutes. Dwight Powell got his 24 minutes in this ball game. Salah Mejri did not play. And so I'm not 100% certain. Well, Dirk Nowitzki played 9 minutes, and that'll be happening from time to time. If he doesn't play, you probably see a few more for maybe both of those guys. I like them both, and I mentioned it on Twitter. I think there's a possibility I flip who I had in front. I liked Powell on the day of the trade, but if Kleber's going to be starting, then he moves in front of him. Simple as that. Just a quicker path to minutes. If you're starting a ball game and you're not horrible, you're probably going to play 6 or 7 minutes before the other guy even sees the floor. It's hard to overcome that. Most reserves don't play more minutes than the starters unless you're, Lou Williams. So I think I moved Kleber in front of Powell. I still like them both. I like Dwight for his efficiency stuff. I know this wasn't a great ball game by all accounts, but this is the kind of ball game you want to have from your second or third center, because even when he's not good, he's not hurting you. He made his free throws. He went 3 or 5 from the field. He got his blocked shot. Could be worse. But for Kleber, to me, he jumps into that top crew of potential forward center pickups. I hope that he gets center eligibility, given that most of his minutes in this game were actually at the center spot. All but maybe 7, something like that, I think. Interested to see how THJ, Courtney Lee fit in. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of Trey Burke with this new team. I think you will see plenty of Tim Hardaway Jr. Dallas is not giving up on this year. It's too late to tank. They're not going to push it because next year when they get Porzingis back, that's when they really want to make a little bit of a surge. But I don't think they're shutting anybody down, and I think Tim Hardaway is going to be happy to be playing with a guy like a Luka Doncic who can get him the ball in the right spots and under a coach who has a clue. Sorry, David Fizdale, you're pissing us all off. Cleveland side, we saw Larry Nance sort of retake the reins at the center position. Cedi Osman did hurt himself in this ball game, though, so you have to wonder, will that allow the Cavs to go to kind of a 2-center lineup where they play Nance at the 4 and Ante Zizic at the 5? I'd like to give Zizic one more game as a result of that Osman injury. And if it doesn't pan out that way, then I think you could probably move on, especially with Kevin Love apparently very close to a return. He could start getting on the floor as early as next freaking week. Sorry, this week. Technically this week now. Week has begun. I keep talking like the trade deadline is next week. It's 3 days from now. I'm losing my mind. I think you see Kevin Love play by this weekend. I gotta wait another week. That'll be interesting. Then we'll really see who the heck is going to play for this team. He's going to play his way into viable minutes. Even if they only let him play 26 a game the rest of the way, he'll be worthwhile. And if he does that for a month, your trade deadline will probably pass in your fantasy league. But if he does it for a couple of weeks, you could lob some offers out there and see if anybody's willing to roll the dice. Lakers had a locker room flare-up after this loss to Golden State. Michael Beasley apparently was upset about his minutes, but he's Michael Beasley, and that's stupid. I think JaVale McGee was also a little bit irritated, and I don't blame him. McGee, in a couple of recent ball games, has come into the game and made an immediate positive impact and then just yanked right out of the contest. It happened in that Clippers game that eventually the Lakers won. The rotations are nonsensical, and that falls on Luke Walton and his coaching staff, and I generally try to defend them, but some of that stuff is weird and doesn't really add up. Initially, they said Lance Stevenson was part of this little argument. It was later revealed that he was not, and Lance was not pleased when he found out he was getting put in this stuff. Apparently, he's quite happy with things in L.A., and he didn't want to be caught up in the mix. But I don't blame JaVale McGee. He was really good for this team at the beginning of the year. He got pneumonia and then sort of got Wally pipped by a guy as cruddy as Ivica Zubac, who's not very good. He played well with Lonzo Ball. They had some chemistry there, but he gets torched repeatedly. And so at the very least, you should see these guys splitting minutes. But then they went to Mo Wagner, I think at the 5 briefly. They went to sort of a small ball 5 a little bit. Hopefully this clears things up. To me, this is a big-time communication breakdown. Tyson Chandler didn't even play in this ball game, so if you wanted to put it on a different veteran, he wasn't even on the floor. Very weird. Guys need to know what their roles are going to be. It's clear they don't right now, and that's what led to this thing, and let's see if it fixes itself. Steph Curry had a bad game, also notable in this thing. New Orleans lost in San Antonio, but they covered. Cheikh Diallo split the center minutes with Jahlil Okafor. I didn't know that this dude was going to start to play a little bit, but if you're in tank mode, you might as well play a young dude. Okafor still had his steal and 3 blocks to salvage the fantasy line. Very interested to see how the minutes go the rest of the way. He wasn't in any big-time foul trouble, so tough to pin it on any one thing. Obviously, LaMarcus Aldridge is a really tough cover. Both of those guys doing their best to kind of hang with it. Frank Jackson had 25 points in 42 minutes, but little else. Tim Frazier, he's an assist specialist. Kenrich Williams had 12 and 8. Drew Holiday had kind of a weird off game. And the Pelicans are just sitting everybody to the deadline and seeing who they can actually unload. They're on full-time fire sale. So keep a real close watch on the team. I don't think that there's anybody I'm picking up with this club because, if they trade Anthony Davis, they're going to get a whole new team coming back from either Toronto or LA or whoever. If they trade Mirotic, they probably get a guy like Derek Favors back. If it's the Jazz, if it's Portland, they might get somebody like a Zach Collins back and perhaps he could be fantasy relevant. So you got to be aware of what could change hands in these deals. It's not just these guys go away. Someone is going to come back. Okafor still appears to have the quickest path to minutes if Anthony Davis is shipped out. Julius Randle, could they really get rid of him? I don't know. Elfrid Payton was a bad signing right from the outset. I think everybody lauded them for that signing. He's not good. So, would I trust a Tim Frazier? If you needed assists real quick, maybe. So I don't think I'm stashing anybody in the traditional sense, like a stash that's not doing anything right now. I think you can keep riding with Okafor right through the deadline, and then we're going to want to reassess things with this team and see if anybody's worth holding the rest of the way. It's weird to me, by the way, that if this team is in full-time fire sale mode, that Drew Holiday is still being given a decent number of minutes. He's one of their best trade chips. Contract is big, but not bloated, and he is so good. I'm sick of everybody talking about most underrated players in the NBA that we all figured out years ago were not underrated. I think it's Drew Holiday now. San Antonio got DeMar DeRozan back, which meant that guys like Davis Bertans weren't going to get as many shots. Bryn Forbes, not as many shots, although he made the most of his stuff. Marco Bellinelli still got his 10 looks and made 7 of them, which is, again, kind of not a sustainable number for an outside shooter. So this team, when fully healthy, goes back to mostly Aldridge, Gay, and DeRozan, and Derek White, who got injured in this ball game. Right heel soreness. I think he's expected back for their next one, but we shall see. And I'm not going to make any moves on that front until we learn a little bit more. Denver, last second win in Minnesota. They were able to overcome a bad game from Nikola Jokic, although a triple-double, an empty one. By his account, this was a bad triple-double. 5 turnovers, missed a bunch of free throws, shot 31% from the field. I'm sure he'd tell you he didn't play that well. Karl Anthony Towns, after getting beat up in a previous matchup, played much better in this one, but he also missed a couple of free throws that maybe could have changed this ball game a little bit. They just really need their guys to get healthy. They need Teague to be healthy. They need Covington to be healthy. They need Rose to be healthy, because Wiggins is terrible, and Jared Bayless is doing his best to fill in, but he's just not very good. And so they're hamstrung by not necessarily a lack of depth, but certainly a lack of willingness to use it. And they need Robert Covington. They're just not good without him on the floor. Houston blew out Utah in Utah thanks to James Harden going full video game mode. 43, 12, and 5 with 6 steals, 4 blocks, 4 3-pointers, a perfect 15 for 15 at the free throw line. We talk about a 5x5. He was a 3-pointer and a block away from a 6x5. What? That's ridiculous. Kenneth Faried fouled out in 20 minutes of this game, but still had a double-double with a block. Gotta like that. And then Chris Paul sat this one out. Nothing interesting on the Utah side, so we'll just keep rumbling right along. Atlanta at Phoenix. Taurean Prince had 3 steals in this ball game, but he's just super quiet these days, and an 8.5 usage rate, which absolutely completely falls on the shoulders of Trae Young. Because the Taurean Prince that we saw last year was a Taurean Prince that actually got to handle the basketball a little bit, orchestrate, slash, drive, be aggressive, make some mistakes. He's not being afforded that opportunity right now. I am very curious to see what happens with Atlanta after the deadline. We know that Bazemore, Jeremy Lin, and Dwayne Dedmon are all on the block. God, I love Dwayne Dedmon. He's had such a wonderful fantasy season. I'm going to be so sad if he gets moved. But if he does get moved, then you probably want to grab an Alex Len. If Bazemore gets moved, Taurean Prince and Kevin Huerter get a little bit more wiggle room. If Jeremy Lin gets moved, I don't think it changes anything at all. And I actually did grab Alex Len, figuring, hell, it's Monday. I can wait 3 days to find out if Dedmon gets moved. And if he does, then Len shifts into probably a 25 to 28-minute role where you hope his free throw percentage won't kill you, but he's just so giant, he's going to fall into a block and a half in that number of minutes, and he's probably going to fall into 10 rebounds in that number of minutes. So, you talk about Hassan Whiteside crushing you. I'd rather throw Alex Len into a lineup these days. I know that sounds stupid, but here we are. On the Phoenix side, Mikal Bridges, man. Golf clap for Mikal Bridges. How good has he been lately? The answer, by the way, is really good. So freaking good. I'm so glad we were able to hang on to him when he wasn't putting up stats besides steals, blocks, and threes, because now we're seeing what he can do when the other stuff starts to go down. And yes, some of it has to do with the absence of TJ Warren and the availability of some shots for other guys on the team. But over his last 3 ball games, he has 11 3-pointers. He's shooting the ball well. He has 8 steals in that span. I mean, he's just been a revelation. And I don't see any reason why, yes, the scoring's going to come back down a little bit. This is a hot spell. But over the last month, he's averaging 9 points a game, and he's a number 43 guy in fantasy because he's done it on 51% shooting, almost 2 threes a game, 2 steals, 0.8 blocks, 0.7, less than 1 turnover in that mix, and two assists, by the way. Oh, he's been outstanding. Building a team, my punt scoring team in one league is just magnifique with Mikal Bridges, Draymond Green, JaVale McGee, Dwayne Dedmon. I got all these guys that can barely break 10 points if they even get there on the year. Patrick Beverley lately, just dominating every other statistical category. It's gorgeous. With Phoenix, we've been getting a lot of Rashawn Holmes questions lately, and I know that this line 2 and 3 with a steal and 2 blocks doesn't really solve your problems, but if he's getting 19 minutes, he's been a top 60 guy this year already. Go look at the game log. You don't have to take my word for it. Look at the numbers. They'll bear it out for you. Philadelphia and Sacramento, nothing really there. Nothing big, at least. Wilson Chandler is out for a couple of weeks, which means there's maybe a tiny bit of wiggle room for a guy like a Mike Muscala, but you saw in this ball game, he couldn't keep up with the Kings, so Landry Shamet and TJ McConnell got to play more. So I'm not trusting anybody outside of the main 4 with Philadelphia. Quickly now on Friday, just to check to make sure we hit all of our bases. I think we did. Any teams that we didn't knock out on Friday? No, that's all of them. Okay. Quickly here on Monday, as we turn the page towards this coming slate, Denver and Detroit, not much to watch for there. Malik Beasley, Monty Morris rolling with Gary Harris and Jamal Murray out. Atlanta, Washington. Atlanta's a team we're watching as the trade deadline approaches. Washington would love to see the minutes for Thomas Bryant trend back up, and Atlanta's a great team if you want to go get somebody some fantasy stats. Milwaukee, Brooklyn, really not much to watch in that one. Indy, keeping an eye on Tyreek Evans. Pelicans, the whole team is still shut down, so I don't expect to see too many big changes from the last one. Houston is at Phoenix, so we should see 30 minutes of Chris Paul in this ball game. Phoenix, not a whole lot to keep an eye on there. We got, I think, a pretty good feel for how everybody's playing. And then the Spurs and the Kings, will get a report on Derek White, see if he's going to be playing here or missing a little bit more time, and if there's anything that you should do as a result of that. Revenge games on this Monday, and then we'll cover quickly here the betting stuff that we missed over the weekend. Just a couple of games that qualify. Brooklyn is 0-1 this year against the Bucks, so that's a revenge game. Spurs lost in Sacramento earlier this year. I hate fading the Kings at home. They've been incredible at the Golden One Center, but here we are. Spurs laying 2 on the road. Weekend was basically a break-even situation for the revenge stuff. I think it may have been down. No, that's not right. It is pretty much break-even. When did the weekend start? The first? I've lost track of time. The first was Friday, and we haven't talked about that. So, yes, it's actually up 0.6 of a unit. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that's fine. But forget the units. It continues to climb in distance away from the spread, and that's the big number here. It's not necessarily the plus or minus in the money column. That will even out over the long run. If you're finding value against the number, that will turn itself over an infinite number of wagers into cash. We're tracking home and home stuff as well, bounce back games as well. Bounce back, by the way, they've turned out to be a bad thing. They're actually losing against the number. The home and home is winning against the number, so we'll keep a close watch on that, and I think we're going to expand our parameters a little bit and try to track a little bit more. Quickly here before we wrap up the podcast as well, trying to knock out a few things at the end of the show and not chew up too much time. I mentioned I was going to tell you about the in-season premium membership. It's on mega sale right now because there is February, March, and half of April left. So 2.5 months of the NBA season, and then you're done. That's it. Fantasy's over. We're 3.5 months in. We have the All-Star break, so it's fewer games than that. And as a result, we've dropped the price at Hoopball down to $12.99 for the month of February. And for the next week, that's right, 7 days, it's $5 off of that. $7.99. And there's infomercial style here at the end of the podcast. And we have coupons. You guys have heard me talk about this all season long. I bet those of you that got it at the beginning of January, enjoyed the premium stuff for the last month, have thought, I really liked the $7 I spent on this premium membership to get 3.5 months worth. Well, guess what? Now for $5, you can get 2.5 months worth. So it's technically not as good of a deal as if you had bought it at the beginning of January on a per month basis. $7 for 3.5 months was $2 a month. And now it's, wait, did I say that right? Yes. And now it's $5 for 2 months, 2 and change. I guess it comes out to about $2 per month right now, but every day you miss, it becomes a slightly lesser deal. Either way, it's about, I've totally lost track of what I was talking about. It's about $2 per month to demo. That's effectively what you're doing. You're demoing it for the rest of the year. If you love it, maybe you get back in, get the season pass next year that gets you the draft guide, the Brewski 150, and the full season premium membership. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. So check that out right now. Coupon code knocks that down to $4.99 for the rest of the regular season. Go to hoop-ball.com. It's under the premium tab. Go premium, and in-season membership is the button you want to click on. Ask me if you need a coupon code, or just try the coupon code NEIL, N-E-I-L. We gave that to Neil Rochelani to give out on the box score breakdown. I'm pretty sure it still works. $7.99, another $3 off with the coupon, $4.99 for the rest of the year. Tell them Dan sent you, and you can still get it for $4.99. They won't bump it up by $1. Okay. I think that about does it for us here on this reverse chronological lightning round Monday. We'll be doing more trade deadline coverage over the course of the week. And then, of course, reminder, the live show Thursday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube, completely free. We'll be tweeting out links all week long. We'll send out a reminder email first thing on Thursday morning. Join us. More than 10,000 people tuned in to watch our live show last year. We had these incredible pickups. I know Brew was talking about it on Friday. Just the things, you want the fantasy information as fast as humanly possible. We will give that to you. You're going to be getting Hoopball pros on that show by the bowlful. You're going to get the ITL guys on that show. We may have a special appearance from our old buddy Vince. You know, I have Apatria, Brandon, JC, Corbin, Josh, Bogman, Welsh, Neil. The list goes on, and it's 4 live hours. You will, of course, have me and Brew, your two least favorite. We'll be there for all 4 hours. No breaks, no commercials, no stoppages. The whole thing. We're just talking about trades all damn day. And I will end this Monday show by reminding everybody, if you're in a league with a moves cap, don't use more than one before Thursday. You're going to want all of them on trade deadline day, because you're probably going to do something crazy, and then you're going to want to rectify it later in the day. So if you have a moves cap, I'm in a league with a 3 weekly moves cap, and that's a crushing number for an itchy trigger finger guy like me. Do not use more than one prior to Thursday morning. We are officially done. I'm Dan Besbris. This is Fantasy NBA Today. Back tomorrow. We'll break down that short Monday card, get you ready for the rest of the week. Wednesday, of course, we'll have the DFS show. We'll talk to Mike Apatria in the morning. He'll get us situated. And then Thursday, live coverage. All freaking morning. I'm going to be exhausted and probably have a cold, because that's how it works when you have a toddler. Have a lovely Monday, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.